Sophia Nelson is a Washington-based blogger. Her editorial about the Gates arrest actually appears in today's The Root, an online magazine whose, by the way, editor-in-chief happens to be Professor Gates. Sophia is joining us right now. Good to see you.
Hey, Fred. Good to see you.
Okay, well, you write in your blog today that the words from the president were politically necessary. And you make reference to his conversation about race back in 2008 as being measured. Well, not this time. Yesterday when he spoke out, he was a lot more direct. So is that the moment that helps to precipitate these lessons that should be pulled from what we witnessed this week, making this a teaching moment?
I do think it's a teachable moment. I think the president was correct. And what I argued in the piece today was that I didn't feel that the president should have apologized, and I was glad that he did not offer a direct apology, but instead he walked back his comments a little bit and put them in context. But I do think he was more direct than we've probably ever seen him on race. At the press conference on Wednesday evening, I think he was there was a little bit of righteous indignation there. I think he was offended as an American and as a black man, frankly, and I think that's when they acted stupidly comments kind of rolled out, and I kind of cringed when he did that, knowing it was going to bring him a backlash.
Because it really was more of an emotional response. I think everyone, did it not even humanize the president because he immediately got it. You had to assess when you heard the word coming out of his mouth stupidly that, you know what, he's been there. He understands this in a much more graphic kind of way.
Yes, I think that's true, and my hope is that when they have this gathering at the White House with the officer, with Professor Gates and the president, that, as I mentioned earlier, I don't want to see a backslapping, beer drinking moment. I really want to see a dialogue open up where perhaps the president speaks about some incident in his life that perhaps happened.
You mean in a very private setting, or you're saying that this needs to be on a stage for all to see?
Oh, I think it needs to be on a stage for all to see. I can't imagine
But then you have to question, how genuine is that?
Well, I think it's a delicate balance, Frederica. I mean, if he's going to have him to the White House, you know that the press corps is going to be there and everybody's going to want to know what happened. And so what I'm saying is, let's use this as an opportunity, as the president said, for it to be a teachable moment. Blacks and whites this past week, as you can see this very differently. And it's shocked me, frankly, how differently blacks and whites see this issue of whether this was racial profiling or whether Gates went over the line. And it's really been disturbing, in fact, to see how far apart we still are despite all the progress we've made.
Blacks and whites saw it very differently this week, yet at the same time, even within the black community, you heard a lot of folks who said, wait a minute, Professor Gates, you didn't handle this one right. You actually got what was sort of coming to you, because everyone knows, especially young black boys, brought up to know that, when confronted by a police officer, there has to be some deference.
Okay, well, I have an issue with that. And
it's still that way, sadly.
I don't agree with that at all in this instance, because the man was in his home. If you go to page 2 of the arrest report, and I talk about this in the Root piece today, the officer says in his own words, I was led to believe he was lawfully in the house, but I was taken aback by his reaction to me. That says to me, as an attorney and as an officer of the court myself, that he should have left it alone. Once he determined he was lawfully in the house, he needed to exit the residence.
So when we talk about this when we talk now about this teachable moment, as people try to extrapolate what he said, what happened, what didn't, how is this a springboard for a teachable moment? Does this mean that people have to learn now a certain way to behave in front of an officer, or does it mean police officers have to behave a certain way when approaching someone who's in their home? I mean, there are a lot of different areas that this discussion has taken us, but how do we consolidate it and say, this is the teachable moment and this is what we have to hang on, this is what we have to carry through?
I think we need to exercise some common sense here, frankly. I mean, to be honest with you, Fred, I think a little testosterone got involved here on both sides. I think Gates was upset. I think the officer didn't like being humiliated. Gates was talking about his mama. And I think that we need to use some common sense in this at some point and talk to each other.
I don't mean to laugh, but it's always funny when you hear it, because it's like, when it comes down, when you start injecting mama into a situation, things get out of hand.
I understand how the officer felt. He talked about his mama. I mean, that wasn't right. I agree with that. I do.
All right, Sophia Nelson, thanks so much. You do so many things. The hat that you're wearing today for us as the blogger of The Root. Oh, and I forgot to ask you, wait a minute. So have you talked to Henry Louis Gates, or how much more difficult did this make covering this story, writing about it, when the editor-in-chief of this publication happens to be the man at the center of this firestorm.
Well, I'm a contributor to The Root, and I do more opinion pieces, but yes, we did have an exclusive interview. If the viewers want to see it, go to theroot.com, and you can see where Terrence Samuel and some of the other editors of The Root did have an interview with Skip, and they talked with him about it. And of course it makes it more difficult because we all love him and think well of him, and we don't like the way he was treated in this instance.
All right. Sophia Nelson, always good to see you. Thanks so much.
Too. Thanks, Fred.
Take care.